Why didn't Anakin ever just try telling the Jedi about Padme? How did he know that they wouldn't have listened? How did he know things could go so wrong? Well, today I have another excerpt from the greatest Star Wars book ever, at least in my opinion. This is another part of the Revenge of the Sith novel, and it's the scene where Anakin goes to Yoda and begins to tell him about his premonitions, his dreams about Padme. Except in the book, it adds so much to the scene that we don't get in the movie. We get into Anakin's head, we learn just what's going on, we get more dialogue. It's great. And we also learn, why Anakin went to Yoda, how he was tempted to reveal everything, and then why he knew he could never trust the Jedi to help him. It's a really good scene in the book. I mean, it's good in the movie, but the book just does it so much more as well, because, it's a book. They have more time to tell stuff. Anyways, before we do read, I did just make a playlist with all of the awesome Revenge of the Sith lore. I've covered this book in like 10 different videos, if not more, so I'll link it in the description. Some of my favorite videos to make. Check it out. You'll enjoy it, I promise. Anyways, let's get into the book. Let's get into this excerpt where Anakin goes to Yoda and, he's stressed out about Padme's dreams, needs guidance from the Jedi Master, from the best Jedi Master that there is. Needs help because no matter what, he's not giving up on Padme, so needs to be told how to save her. Alright, let's get into it. Anakin was alone, and Padme had told him that his nightmare must be only a metaphor, but he knew better. He knew that Force prophecy was not absolute, but his had never been wrong. Not in the slightest detail. He, Anakin, had known as a boy he would be chosen by the Jedi. He had known his adventures would span the galaxy. As a mere 9-year-old, long before he even understood what love was, he had looked upon Padme Amidala's flawless face and seen there that she would love him, and that they would someday marry. There had been no metaphor in his dreams of his mother, screaming in pain, tortured to death. "I knew you would come to me, Annie. I missed you so much," he remembered her saying. He could have saved her. Maybe. It had always seemed so obvious to him that if he had only returned to Tatooine a day earlier, an hour, he could have found his mother, and she would still be alive, and yet the great prophets of the Jedi had always taught that the gravest danger in trying to prevent a vision of the future from coming to pass is that in doing so a Jedi can actually bring it to pass. As though if he'd run away in time to save his mother, he might have made himself somehow responsible for her death. As though if he tried to save Padme, he could end up, blankly impossible though it was, killing her himself. Impossible. But to do nothing, to simply wait for Padme to die. Could something be more than impossible? When a Jedi had a question about the deepest subtleties of the Force, there was one source to whom he could always turn. And so, the first thing that morning, without even taking time to stop by his own quarters for a change of clothing, Anakin had gone to Yoda for advice. He'd been surprised by how graciously the ancient Jedi Master invited him into his quarters, and how patiently Yoda had listened to his stumbling attempts to explain his question without actually giving away his secret. Yoda had never made any attempt to conceal what had always seemed to Anakin to be a gruff disapproval of Anakin's very existence. But this morning, despite clearly having other things on his mind, even Anakin's Force perceptions, far from the most subtle, had detected echoes of conflict and worry within the Master's chamber. Yoda had simply offered Anakin a place on one of the softly rounded pod seats, and suggested that they meditate together. He hadn't even asked for details. Anakin had been so grateful, so relieved, so unexpectedly hopeful that he'd found tears welling into his eyes, and some few minutes had been required for him to compose himself into proper Jedi serenity. After a time, Yoda's eyes had slowly opened, and the deep furrows of his ancient brow had deepened further. Premonitions. Premonitions. Deep questions they are. Sense the future once all Jedi could. Now, few alone have this skill. Visions. Gifts from the Force. And curses. Signposts and snares, these visions of yours. They are of pain, Anakin had said, of suffering. He had barely been able to make himself add, and death. In these troubled times, no surprise this is. Yourself, you see? Or someone you know? Anakin had not trusted himself to answer. Someone close to you? Yoda had prompted gently. Yes, Anakin had replied, eyes turned away from Yoda's wise stare. Let him think he was talking about Obi-Wan. It was close enough. Yoda's voice was still gentle, still understanding. The fear of loss is a path to the dark side, young one. I won't let my visions come true, Master. I won't, Anakin replied. Rejoice for those who transform into the Force. Mourn them not. Miss them not. Then why do we fight at all, Master? Why save anybody? Speaking of anybody, we are not, Yoda said sternly. Speaking of you and your vision, and your fear, we are. The shadow of greed attachment is. What you fear to lose, train yourself to release. Let go of fear, and loss cannot harm you. Which was then when Anakin realized Yoda wasn't going to be any help at all. The greatest sage of the Jedi Order had nothing better to offer him than more pious babble about letting things pass out of his life. Like he hadn't heard that a million times already. Easy for him. Who had Yoda ever cared about? Really cared about? One thing Anakin was certain about. The ancient master had never been in love. Or he would have known better than to expect Anakin to just fold his hands, close his eyes, and settle in to meditate while what was left of Padme's life evaporated. So all that had been left for him was to find some way to respectfully leave and go find Obi-Wan, because he wasn't about to give up. Not in this millennium, not ever. He would do anything to save Padme. And that's where we're ending it today, the excerpt. That's where it ends. So why didn't Anakin ever tell the Jedi? Why didn't he ever confide in Yoda? Because anytime he tried to get close, anytime he tried to, let them know what was going on, the Jedi just didn't have any sort of answer that Anakin was looking for. Let go, give it up, just don't even really try, just don't mourn. It's all part of life, basically. Anakin, he was already pretty sure they didn't like him. Now, imagine if he actually told them that he was breaking the Jedi code by having a wife. Let's imagine that Anakin did tell the Jedi about Padme. What happens next? They don't help him. They probably expel Anakin from the Jedi Order. And then he can't fight in the war. He can't truly protect Padme. He can't ever get access to the Jedi archives. Or he will be arrested, if he tries to do any of that. With Anakin as a Jedi, there was always a chance he could learn how to save Padme. But if he tells them about her, and they react by expelling him, his hope for saving her is lost. So, become master, or find a different path. And the part that really stuck out to me was just the beginning, when Yoda had let Anakin in. He was so kind, so gentle, basically saying, hey, let's meditate together, let's figure this out, what's wrong, let's get to it. And Anakin, in his own head, mentioned that he was tearing up, that he couldn't believe it, that this was amazing, the gratitude he had. And you mean to tell me that in that moment, Yoda couldn't sense what Anakin was feeling? Yoda couldn't sense the turmoil, the happiness about actually being able to talk to someone. And yet Yoda still was like, you just have to train yourself to let go. As if that was going to work. The inability, the unwillingness for Yoda and the other Jedi to bend the Jedi code, to bend their rules, to bend what they believe, to help Anakin, who was obviously different than them. I mean, it was their downfall. They had a lot of downfalls, but this was certainly one of them. Anakin needed someone to just help him, to be there for him, to give him actual advice, to understand him. Someone like Chancellor Palpatine, someone like Qui-Gon Jinn. Those were the two that could do it. Obi-Wan tried, he really did, but he had to balance being on the Jedi Council, being a Jedi, and, trying to help Anakin in ways that he could. Ahsoka could have done it, maybe if she wasn't expelled from the Order, he can go to her. Man, a lot of what ifs. Speaking of what ifs, if you like this channel, I do a lot of those. They're a lot of fun. Tomorrow's is going to be what if Anakin killed Obi-Wan, and what if Yoda killed Palpatine. Basically, what if the fights were reversed. So that'll be fun. Stay tuned for that one. Subscribe, leave a like, comment. Thanks. Check out the playlist in the description. You will love it. I think. I don't know. Can't promise anything. Anyways, have a good day. Appreciate you all.